Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs and another edition of Studio Albums Ranked. Today we are going to be ranking the studio albums of the mighty King Crimson. A wonderful catalogue it is, 13 studio albums in all, and there really isn't a bad one among them. So ranking them from least favourite to most favourite was a difficult task, but there definitely were ones that I listen to and I like more than others. There will be a couple of surprises in this list, I think, for a lot of people. But just remember, these are my preferences. I'm not saying this is a definitive list. This is just how I like the King Crimson catalogue. So let's start with my number 13, and that is their album from 2000, which is The Construction of Light. This is actually the reconstruction of Light, the vinyl edition. The original Construction of Light's never been released on vinyl. The difference being that with the reconstruction, they re-recorded the drum parts to mostly acoustic drums as opposed to electronic ones. This album is a good album, but on the original, and that's what I'm really basing my ranking on, is the original. I never did like that drum sound, the electronic drums that Pat Mastelotto uses. There's still some good tracks on here. Prozac Blues is funny. The Construction of Light itself is really good. Fractured, incredible. Larks Tongue's in Aspic Part 4 is great too. Even The World's My Oyster Kitchen Floor Wax Museum, another great play on words song. So my number 12 is going to be their last studio album, which is from 2003, and that is The Power to Believe. It's a similar album to Construction of Light. The drum sounds a little better on this one, and I think some of the songs are a little better on this one. The little Power to Believe parts that go throughout it are really nice. Level 5, great. Since been revealed that Level 5 is actually Larks Tongue's in Aspic Part 5. Eyes Wide Open is beautiful. Electric is crushing. Facts of Life is good. Happy with What You Have to Be Happy With. Yeah, it's a really good album. But I just like these other albums a little bit better. My number 11 is going to be their album from 1984, the third part of the 80s trilogy, and that is Three of a Perfect Pair. This album really does split in two between sort of the Adrian Belew influenced material and the Robert Fripp influenced material. And as such, I don't think it coheres as an album as well as the other 80s albums do. Still, the title track, Three of a Perfect Pair, is a great song. Sleepless, incredible song. Really love that. But I'm more into the instrumental stuff. Dig Me, though. Really weird song and great. But I love Nuages, I like Industry, No Warning, and then Larks Tongue's in Aspic Part 3 is really good. So that is my number 11. My number 10 is going to be their album from 1995, and that is Thrash. This is the comeback. This is the so-called double trio lineup of the band, where you had two guitar players, two bass or stick players, and two drummers. And a good comeback it is. It really kind of combines the 70s, sort of the Fripp, Wetton, Bruford lineup, and the 80s lineup as far as sound goes, with some new sort of bits and pieces in there as well. But Vroom is wonderful. Dinosaur I always loved. Walking on Air is beautiful. Baboom, Thrash. People is a great song. One Time is gorgeous. Sex, Sleep, Eat, Drink, Dream. And then you get Vroom Vroom at the end. Really good album. My number 9 is going to be their 1982 album Beat, And I apologise to Martin Popov because I know this is his favourite King Crimson album and even his favourite progressive rock album of all time. But it's number 9 on my list. Not to say it's not a really good album, because it is. It's a little less focused, I think, than the album that came before it. But there's still some real highlights on this album. Neil and Jack and Me is great, wonderful. Heartbeat is an interesting poppy song. Not sure whether it really belongs on a King Crimson album, though. It's a great Adrian Belew song. Satori and Tangier is wonderful. Waiting Man, I've always adored Waiting Man. Neurotica's great. Two Hands, The Howler, and then Requiem is really wonderful, sort of improv to close the album out. My number 8 is going to be their 1971 album Islands. It's one of these transitional lineups that they had in the early 70s where they'd have a different lineup on every album. This particular lineup was with Boz and Ian Wallace and Mel Collins. And it made for some interesting sounds. I mean, a lot of guests on this album too, as there were on the sort of previous album. Formentera Lady is great. Sailor's Tale is incredible. The Letters, Ladies of the Road, the Prelude, Song of the Gulls, and then Islands. Lovely album. A couple of really sort of rocking songs, but a lot of really pastoral music on this album. So yeah, but I tend to prefer the album that came immediately before it just a little better, just because it's a strange album, and that is Lizard from 1970. Yeah, just a really strange album with songs like Circus and Indoor Games and Happy Families. Lady of the Dancing Water is absolutely beautiful, and then you get the side-long epic, which is Lizard, on side 2, and there's so much wonderful music in that side-long epic. But it's definitely the strangest album they did. I mean, you had Gordon Haskell as the lead vocalist for most of it, although you have John Anderson guesting on one song. Again, as with Islands, you have a lot of guest musicians. But yeah, very jazzy. A lot of this is really jazzy, and I really like that. Next one is going to be my number 6. Might come as a bit of a surprise to some people. Definitely one that ranks a lot higher for a lot of people, I know. And that is Larks Tongues in Aspic from 1973. Not to say this isn't a wonderful album. All the rest of these albums are just absolutely top notch and were really hard to rank. The only reason I probably rank this one lower than the other 70s, sort of the Cross, Fripp, Brett and Bruford lineup, is simply because I feel like the incredible power that lineup had doesn't quite come through in the recordings on this album. Not to say that the actual tracks aren't absolutely incredible. Larks Tongues in Aspic Part 1, Book of Saturday, Exiles. Exiles sort of sounds a little bit more like, almost like something that could have come off the debut album, I think. Easy Money, great song. Talking Drum, wonderful instrumental. And then Larks Tongues in Aspic Part 2, an absolute King Crimson classic, that one. Wonderful album. And it kind of pains me to have to rank it this low. But I just like these other albums better. The next one's probably going to come as even more of a surprise to people that it's ranked this low, because it's going to be a lot of people's number 1, I know. Again, I just like some of the other albums better, and that's going to be come clear. But my number 5 is the debut, In the Court of the Crimson King. And what can't be said about this album? It is a stone cold classic. 21st Century Schizoid Man, I Talk to the Wind, Epitaph, Moonchild, and Court of the Crimson King. Probably what brings this one down just a little for me is I like Moonchild, but the improvisation part does drag on a little bit for me. But it is an incredible classic album. I tend, and this is going to sound like heresy to a lot of people, but I tend to prefer the follow-up, In the Wake of Poseidon. I listened to this one more than I listened to In the Court of the Crimson King. I mean, a lot of people say that this is a pale imitation of Court of the Crimson King. I don't see that. There are a couple of songs that have similarities. Pictures of the City has a little bit of a similarity to 21st Century Schizoid Man. In the Wake of Poseidon sounds a little bit like a cross between Epitaph and Court of the Crimson King. But the songs I just love. I mean, Pictures of a City is wonderful. The piece opening is great. All the little pieces, as it were, are really nice. I really like them. Cadence and Cascade is absolutely beautiful. Probably the best Gordon Haskell vocal on any King Crimson song. Greg Lake sings all the rest on this album, as he does on Court of the Crimson King. In the Wake of Poseidon is a really, really great epic song. But side 2's where it's really at for me. You get the instrumental piece, then you get Cat Food. Wonderful, wonderful song, released as a single. Shame it wasn't a hit. And then you get into The Devil's Triangle. And that is just some of the most evil sounding, scary music to me. The scariest use of mellotrons, I think, ever in any piece of music. And then you get Peace and Ending, which is a beautiful way to end the album. A lovely sort of quiet ending after the terror that is The Devil's Triangle. But I adore this album. My number 3 is probably my number 3 for partly sentimental reasons, but also because it's a fabulous album, and that is Stylus and Bible Black from 1974. This is the first King Crimson album I ever heard. I was going through a box of records one night. I won't go through the whole story, but I was going through a box of records one night when I was about 14, and I was just pulling records out at random and putting them on my mother's turntable and listening to them through headphones. And one of them was, I think I mentioned in my Emerson, Lake and Palmer video, was Brain Salad Surgery. Another one of them was this album, Stylus and Bible Black. And I became a King Crimson fan from the minute I heard this album. Great Deceiver, wonderful song. Lament, We'll Let You Know, great sort of improv. The Night Watch, beautiful, beautiful song. And it was just so wonderful when I went to the Netherlands about 12 years ago. I actually got to go to the Rijksmuseum and actually see the painting, The Night Watch. Fabulous, gorgeous painting, huge. Not like the Mona Lisa. This thing's huge, takes up a whole wall. Trio is an absolutely gorgeous improv. The Mincer is an improv which they added lyrics to in the studio. Then you get the title track, Stylus and Bible Black, another improv, and then Fracture, one of Fripp's greatest written instrumentals. Now, a lot of this album was recorded live, but they took out all the audience and made it into a studio album, which is why it's included here. They released it as a studio album. I know some people are going to say, oh, a lot of it was recorded live. Well, some of it was recorded in the studio as well. And it was definitely released as a studio album, not as a live album. Anyway, getting down to my 2 last albums, which are my 2 absolute favourite King Crimson albums. And at number 2, we're going to have their 1981 album, Discipline. The first with the lineup of Robert Fripp, Adrian Belew, Bill Bruford and Tony Levin. And just Absolutely killer album. Not a bad track on this entire album. I listen to this album all the time still. This was originally played for me by a friend of mine who unfortunately is no longer with us. And I thank him every day for introducing me to the 80s King Crimson with this album. Elephant Talk, absolutely incredible. Frame by frame, the interweaving guitars on that. Oh, Mata Kudasai with that beautiful slide playing from Adrian Belew. Indiscipline, love that. Bill Bruford goes nuts on that song. Thela Hunjinjit, wonderful track with the sort of narration, sort of cinema verite sort of feel to the narration that was recorded about Adrian Belew talking about almost being mugged. Then you get the Sheltering Sky. What a gorgeous, gorgeous instrumental that is. Came out of an improv, and then they reworked out how to play it and recorded it in the studio. And then Discipline, and they, again, those weaving guitars on the title track, just incredible. Complex music and yet accessible. Wonderful, fabulous album. Really adore it. But my number one King Crimson album, and I think it is for a lot of people, is their 1974 album, Red. What can be said about this album? It, again, absolutely perfect album from top to bottom. The title track, in probably one of Fripp's best instrumentals, if not his best. Absolutely love it. Fallen Angel, incredible song. Love that song. One More Red Nightmare is a really, really great song too. Then on side 2 you get Providence, which is a live improv. And it's absolutely beautiful. David Cross's violin on that is wonderful. And then the title track, Stylus, probably my favourite King Crimson song of all time. I know my son absolutely loves it, and he's not really a big King Crimson fan, but he loves the song Stylus. It's my favourite King Crimson song. Really don't know how to describe it. It starts off with a beautiful sort of ballad sung part, and then the instrumental that comes after it just becomes ferocious. Just wonderful. So that's my King Crimson ranking. Going through them again from top to bottom. At number 1, we have Red. At number 2, Discipline. At number 3, Stylus and Bible Black. At number 4, In the Wake of Poseidon. At number 5, In the Court of the Crimson King. At number 6, Larks Tongues in Aspic. At number 7, Lizard. At number 8, Islands. At number 9, Beat. At number 10, Thrash. At number 11, Three of a Perfect Pair. At number 12, The Power to Believe. And at number 13, The Construction of Light. Or in this case, it's The Reconstruction of Light. So that's my King Crimson ranking. Please let me know in the comments what your favourite King Crimson albums are, where you think I got it right, where you think I got it wrong. If you want to, I'd love to see it if you have an entire ranking of the King Crimson catalogue. I love seeing rankings, and I especially love them, in fact, when they differ from mine, because I love hearing how people have different opinions on these albums. And I just adore reading the comments too, so please leave a comment. Please like, share and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. I'm thankful to everybody who does like, share and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have playlists for all my different videos, so if you want to go and look at some of my other studio albums ranked, there's a playlist for that. If you want to look at my anniversary albums, there's a playlist for that. Favorite albums of all time, playlist for that. In defense of, playlist for that, and so on. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram, I'm mostly posting the albums I happen to be listening to at the time. On Twitter, I tend to talk about anything and everything, although I am trying to give that a bit more of a music focus. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.